Serverless computing. I bet you hear that term everywhere. It promises this amazing world where you don't have to worry about servers. But what if I told you that the name itself is, well, kind of a lie? In this explainer, we're going to cut right through the hype, we're going to debunk the biggest myths, and get to the bottom of what serverless really means for how we build software today. All right, so let's start with the official textbook definition. The International Organization for Standardization, the ISO folks, they say it's a cloud service where you can just use stuff without having to provision, deploy, or manage any of the hardware or software resources underneath. Basically, the cloud provider handles all the messy, behind-the-scenes work. Sounds pretty great, right? A real dream for developers? Well, here's the twist. The name serverless might just be the biggest misnomer in all of tech. Because, and this is the big secret, there are still servers. A whole lot of them, actually. You just don't own them, you don't see them, you don't manage them. The cloud provider is the one handling all of that, hidden away behind the curtain. And that, right there, leads us to the real question. If the servers haven't actually vanished, then what's changed? What's the big deal? Well, the best way to understand what serverless is to first understand what it isn't. So let's do that. We're going to break down the 3 biggest myths that are floating around out there. Okay, myth number 1, serverless means all your complexity just disappears. The thinking goes, hey, if I don't have to manage servers, my job is going to be a piece of cake. No servers, no problems. But the reality is you're not getting rid of problems, you're just trading them for a whole new set. And here's the crucial point. Complexity isn't eliminated, it's shifted, it moves. So yeah, you can wave goodbye to things like provisioning hardware and patching operating systems, but look what you get in return. Your developers are now on the hook for optimizing costs down to the millisecond, wrestling with complex access policies, and tackling the absolute nightmare of debugging a system that's scattered across who knows how many different functions. And that leads us right into myth number 2, that serverless is this magical, worry-free zone. The idea that you just hand the keys to your cloud provider, kick back, and relax. Yeah, not so fast. While they're managing the hardware, you're inheriting a whole new category of strategic risks you need to think about. In the real world, you've got a new set of challenges to master. We're talking about brand new security threats you've probably never even thought of, the incredible difficulty of just seeing what's happening inside your own application, and the very, very real risk of getting completely locked into one cloud provider's world. Let's dig into security for a second. You're now facing threats you've never seen before. For example, the denial of wallet attack. This is wild. An attacker's goal isn't to steal your data. Their goal is to make you go broke by just triggering your function over and over and over again, running up a gigantic, unexpected bill. Then there's this challenge of observability, which is a fancy way of saying seeing what the heck is going on. With a traditional application, it's kind of like looking under the hood of a car. But in a serverless world, it's more like trying to understand a whole city's traffic from a helicopter, at night, without a map. Your old monitoring tools are basically blind here. You need brand new specialized tools just to trace one single request as it bounces through your system. And finally, we have to talk about vendor lock-in, because when you go serverless, you get deeply tangled up in one provider's ecosystem. You're using their databases, their messaging systems, their identity services, the whole shebang. So trying to move to another cloud provider later on, it becomes, and this is a quote, virtually impossible. It's like a one-way door. Our third and final myth is all about architecture. It's this pervasive idea that in the serverless world, smaller is always better. That the ultimate goal is to chop up your application into the tiniest possible little functions you can imagine. This way of thinking leads to what we call an anti-pattern, which is basically a bad habit that seems like a good idea at first. It's called the grain of sand. This is where you create functions that are so tiny, they actually end up making things more complex, adding more overhead, and even hurting your performance. And if you take that grain of sand idea to its logical extreme, you end up with a complete mess that has a fantastic name, Lambda Pinball. It's exactly what it sounds like. One function gets triggered and it calls another, which calls another, which calls another, in this long, fragmented, and totally unpredictable chain reaction that just pings and pongs all over your system. And let me tell you, this pinball effect is an absolute disaster. It adds delays at every single step, it makes debugging a complete nightmare, and it totally kills your ability to see what's going on. The irony is, you think you're building these sleek, nimble microservices, but what you've actually created is something called a distributed monolith. And that is the worst of both worlds.
You get all the tangled up drawbacks of a single clunky application combined with all the operational headaches of a complex distributed system.
So, we've busted the myths. What's the reality of serverless then? It's this. Serverless isn't just a different piece of technology, it is a fundamental shift in how you think about building and delivering software. It's all about adopting a serverless mindset. It all starts with this one critical point from the author Jan Kui. The goal is not to use serverless just for the sake of using serverless. The only, and I mean only, reason to adopt it is if it genuinely helps you deliver real value to your customers faster. That's your North Star. That's the only thing that matters. And that mindset leads you to some very clear principles for your architecture. Think about it like this. Within one of your services, you use orchestration. That's like having a conductor for an orchestra, telling each part exactly what to do. But between your different services, you use choreography. That's more like a dance floor, where each service just reacts to events from the others. There's no central boss. This is what keeps your system flexible and stops you from falling into that lambda pinball trap. A really key tactic here is to build strong fences, to establish clear boundaries. You have to clearly separate your internal public interfaces. Think of these like the private back roads that your team can change anytime, from your external published interfaces. Those are the stable, well-documented public highways that other teams are going to depend on. It's this formal contract that prevents all that pinball chaos. So, when it all comes down to it, serverless isn't about getting rid of servers. It's about a strategic transfer of responsibility. It requires new skills, new tools, and, most importantly, a whole new way of thinking about architecture and how you deliver value. And that really just leaves us with one final, big question. Is your team truly ready for that shift?